Hey there, everyone. It's that time of the week again when we all get together and talk some Bengals, do a little kumbaya session, if you will. And I am no longer on my own this week. I'm back. We got back in the saddle. Scott Schulze, I'm glad you're back, buddy. Struggled without you last week. Missed you. Understand you had some things going on, but good to see you. How are you, buddy?
Good. Yeah, I was taking last week off celebrating the feast day of St. Ansbald, who no one's probably ever heard of, including me until today. But apparently that's where I was last week.
I like it.
There was no one cool in the calendar today, so I am back and ready for some talk.
Well, this, again, for those who don't know, maybe this is your first time tuning in, this is the Orange and Black Insider podcast, the Bengals podcast for the fans, and we will be taking some fan questions, listener questions at the end of the show as we normally do, so please submit those via YouTube. We're also streaming live on cincyjungle.com. So check out those two links. It's posted on our Twitter handle at BengalsOBI. And if you don't want to join the live stream and or the live chat with other fans, maybe you're antisocial, and that's okay. You can still shoot us a question via Twitter at BengalsOBI or via email, theobinsider@gmail.com. One of the things we want to try and start making a little bit of a tradition here is kind of a question of the show. And this is going to be something that's going to be, sometimes it's pop culture, sometimes it's something goofy and fun, sometimes it's going to be Bengal related, and it's probably going to depend on hot topics around the nation and the world, and hot topics with the Bengals, what's going on with the team, and fan mood. That's probably going to dictate a lot of this. But for those of you who don't know, Scott Schulze, my esteemed co-host here, it has a bit of a sweet tooth. And we've kind of hinted at it a couple times on a couple of different episodes. So Scott wanted to pose a question for the show, and what we want you to do is we want you to answer the question or give your answers in the YouTube chat, in the Cincy Jungle comment thread, on Twitter, all that good stuff. We want to hear back from you. But Scott, you and Dairy Queen have this love affair, my friend, and it borders on unhealthy. Well, I mean, most of their food is unhealthy anyway, but your love affair with Dairy Queen and their Blizzard borders on a little bit interesting. But you have a specific type of Blizzard that you think is your favorite, and you want to pose that question to the audience.
Yeah. So my question is basically, what is your favorite type of Blizzard? If you haven't been to Dairy Queen and haven't had a Blizzard, you have like a Culver's or I don't know, Colson Creamery. Yeah, obviously the flavors. I mean, the combinations are kind of similar. You have chocolate, vanilla. You go ahead and feel free to share what that is. I'm just going with Dairy Queen Blizzard because obviously I think those are really good. And we are talking about something near and dear to my heart this week. Hopefully not too near that it's clogging it, but as you mentioned, although ice cream I think is pretty healthy, because I lost about 30 or 40 pounds a few years ago on what I call an ice cream diet, right? Ice cream almost.
Well, then what kind of a diet is that?
The thing that I'm convincing myself with, and any doctors listening, I'm sure will confirm this, because ice cream's cold, my body heat had to rise in temperature to melt it, and so I was burning more calories that way.
The only way I could see that working is if you had your tonsils out, and that's the only thing you could eat, like that and soup or something. But anyways, continue on, my friend.
A ton of walking, but I'm sure the walking was minimal. It was probably mostly the ice cream. But that being said, the one that to me is by far and away my favorite, and I've mentioned this several times, like if anyone who listens to the show works at Dairy Queen or is looking for advertising, feel free to send me some coupons, and I'll be more than happy to. Well, I guess I'm obviously mentioning them on the air for free right now, so maybe I'm giving away the milk before I buy the cow kind of thing. And that being said, chocolate with peanut butter cup, by far and away my favorite. Now, chocolate with Butterfinger, I'd say is a close number 2. That used to be my favorite until I tried the peanut butter cup. That is pretty good. I really cannot argue with that. I will say one thing. I love chocolate chip cookie dough. And if I'm making cookies at home, I'll just I love the cookie dough. Now, okay, disclaimer, don't do that at home. It's unhealthy. There's eggs. So now that's the other way. the chocolate chip cookie dough, I'm a huge fan of. I don't like it in the Dairy Queen Blizzard. They do something to their dough, probably to make it sanitary, so it doesn't kill you. But whatever they do kind of kills the taste of it. So I'm not a fan of their Blizzard with that. But the chocolate soft serve ice cream with the peanut butter cups or even the Butterfinger, if you want to bribe me, that is a really good way to do that. That is a really good way. And the bigger, the better, obviously. I mean, yeah, the mini is nice, but, you know, you get them. That's kind of a taste. You need the whole thing. So I'm going to say without doubt that one is my favorite. I'm not a big fan on the food. Like, I don't go there for burgers and fries. Like, I really can't. I'm not a big fan of that stuff they make. I go there for one reason only: the cold stuff. And if I'm going to make the trip there and get the cold stuff, it's going to be a Blizzard. I mean, there's just no. Now, let's share one interesting story about that, and then I'll see what your favorite is. We'll see what some of the fans' favorites are. Okay. Several years ago, we were on a vacation down in the southeast of the United States, and we were driving through Georgia, and we were going north on, I think, I-75, and like there's a spot where like every mile there was a billboard for Dairy Queen and some gas station. I don't know, Chevron, Speedway, BP, somebody. It was like this big shared, you know, Dairy Queen plus gas station. You go a mile later, there's another big billboard. It says Dairy Queen's gas station. You go a mile later, there's another billboard, Dairy Queen gas station. And I told my wife, you know, on the way back, we're going to stop there because I just really want a Blizzard. I hadn't had one on this whole trip. It was vacation. I was going to get one. And you see this billboard like every mile. So for 30, 40 minutes, we were driving north on this billboard after billboard after billboard for this one Dairy Queen. Like, my goodness, yeah, they're clearly spending some money advertising. And every time I saw one, it would say, you know, 20 more miles, 15 miles, 12 miles.
Oh, so they just sold you. Oh, they just reeled you in then.
Well, yeah, and I was convinced, like, you know, I mean, I knew when I saw the first one, I'm going to go there. I'm like, 40 miles? Are you kidding me? And the next one, you had 33 miles, and you're getting closer. And so, but you get so used to it, you just kind of put it out of mind. So by the time we actually got there and I saw the billboard for it, I thought it was just another, oh, it's coming up in a couple miles. Drove right past it.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
So all that advertising, and you drove past it. Oh, my gosh. Oh, my God.
Yeah, by the time I drove, I'm like, oh, there it was.
So your combo, your favorite combo, is the chocolate ice cream or the chocolate soft serve with the Reese's peanut butter cup, correct?
Yes.
With the second being chocolate and Butterfinger.
Correct.
So you like chocolate. That's a lot of chocolate. Okay. I guess I'm not a big dessert guy, truth be told. I like more of the salty, savory. I might go for a little bit of a nice glass of wine or a couple of other adult type of beverages over a type of dessert. But I will say Blizzards are pretty good. I don't know if they're my absolute favorite dessert, as they might be with you, my friend. But I'll go similar route. But I'm going to go vanilla soft serve with the Reese's. I think that's pretty good. Truth be told, I have not had a Blizzard in I don't know how long. But you mentioned sponsorship opportunities there, advertisement opportunities there, Scott. If DQ wants to reach out and they want to sponsor the question of the show, we'll take it. And I think you will take payment in the forms of Blizzard, correct?
Yeah, and just to be fair, you know, if someone like Culver's or Cold Stone Creamery, you know, one of their places, if they want us to, you know, advertise, if Dairy Queen drops the ball and one of their people wants to advertise, I am not going to say no to that either.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. A couple of responses already. I don't know. I don't know what this stands for. Maybe I'm just I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a dessert guy. But Royal Flush 513 says I'm a UDF man. I don't know if UDF is a
Ohio. It's United Dairy Farmers. It's an Ohio chain. It's kind of like has ice cream. Soft serve and hard serve.
Gotcha. See, I'm ignorant. I don't know. And Cliff 3JLL says dipped cone is the best. So you've got some competition there. Again, just a fun little question, and one we're going to start making kind of a regular thing. Question of the show. Again, it could be something as interesting as the DQ Blizzards and your favorite flavors, or something that happens with the Bengals and other little fun tidbits that we want to talk about. But we want to hear from you. Again, this is an interactive show. We want to really engage the listeners and let us know what some of your favorite DQ stuff, or if you don't like DQ, if you think Blizzards are overrated and Scott's a crazy man, let him know that too. I'm sure he'll appreciate the name calling. Let's move on, though, Scott. Real quick, we actually have a little bit of breaking news before we kind of get to more of the Bengals stuff. And thank you to some of you in the chat room. I kind of saw a little bit of buzz and then did a little look up real quick. There was a lot of talk about the Bengals potentially going Mike Williams at number 9 overall in this year's draft. He kind of somewhat surprisingly got nabbed up at number 7 by the Chargers, and now there is a report, unfortunately for him, because this is a guy who has immense talent, but he's had a lot of injury. Well, I wouldn't say a lot of injuries, but the injuries he's had have been really, really devastating. And this one, according to Adam Schefter and other sources, saying he might need to have surgery on a herniated disc in his back that would potentially end his 2017 season before it began. That would not be good. We've seen the Chicago Bears miss out on Kevin White, a guy they really had high hopes for, especially opposite of Alshon Jeffrey. So if you know things about Mike Williams, he seems to be a pretty decent kid, pretty decent guy. I mean, I guess you kind of wipe your brow if you're the Bengals a little bit and say, well, thank God we kind of avoided that, but you never want to root for an injury or anything like that. So I don't know if you have any quick thoughts on that, Scott. Just some breaking news on Mike Williams, a guy I was personally high on going into the draft for the Bengals. I thought he would be a nice compliment to A.J. Green. Again, nothing official, but could be missing the season here as we go on.
Yeah, just like two quick things. One, yeah, I was really high on him too because he reminded me of a better version of Josh Dobson, who I was a huge fan of last year.
Yeah.
The other thing that kind of makes you, when you hear it's Mike Williams that gets hurt, it just kind of makes you think these Clemson wide receivers are snake bit because Sammy Watkins, another top 10 and top 5, the Bills traded up for him, and they're 3 years in and really haven't had any production from him because he keeps getting hurt. And now you have another guy who's supposed to be just as good, and he goes down. I think Martavis Bryant was also a Clemson guy. He missed time. Granted, it's because he was suspended. But as talented as all these great Clemson wide receivers are, it's just ridiculous how they are just struggling to get on the field and stay on the field. And not like the Alabama guys who just come in and aren't that good. They just, for one reason or another, can't seem to.
Yeah, and what's a shame about it is those 3 guys you mentioned, Bryant lesser so than Watkins and Williams here. But all 3 guys, I mean, their athleticism is off the charts, and I mean, Watkins especially was a guy that was like, whoa, this guy's incredible. So I don't know what's going on with those guys. Obviously, maybe just a mere coincidence, but kind of ashamed to hear about that. And he's a guy who, Mike Williams, has been a guy who has worked back from other injuries to really contribute and was a really big integral part of the Clemson team that won the national championship last year. If you did not catch that game, it was one of the best college football games I've ever seen. But he had some very nice plays in that game and was a very impressive player. And for the Chargers' sake, I hope this isn't true, but kind of interesting to note, especially when the Bengals, the Chargers kind of leapfrogged the Bengals, so to speak, to grab him if that was one of the guys the Bengals wanted, and the Bengals, you don't want to say settled for Ross, but they took him. And, Ross has some injury stuff of his own, but he appears by all indications to be close to ready as training camp is getting close here. And speaking of training camp, Scott, last week I started a series that I'd like to kind of continue and start doing, especially through training camp as we gear up for it. And we're just about, I think a week and a half away or so at this point. Last week I started with the potential Bengals breakout player of 2017. And for those who don't know or unfamiliar, I have kind of done some things on Cincy Jungle the past couple of years, which have been the top 10. I've kind of done a top 10 potential breakout players. We're not really ranking them, so to speak, this year, but kind of talking about, some of these guys who might, with an increased role in 2017 from 2016, with more playing time, with maybe a free agency departure. Now they're stepping into a bigger role. Maybe it's a rookie who we don't think might get playing time, but could not only make the team, but have a decent impact. And by breakout, we don't necessarily mean Pro Bowl, all-pro player, but a guy whose contributions are noticeable and much more noticeable from the year prior. Last week, I kicked off the segment with Andrew Billings, and that was kind of met with some, I think it was kind of predictable in terms of who I picked, but it was met with a lot of, I hope so, I think so. Obviously the size, strength stuff that we heard about has a lot of people excited. I'm going to ask you about a potential breakout player, but before I do you have any just quick thoughts on my selection of Andrew Billings last week to kind of kick this off?
Well, I hate to say this, it sounds like we're patting each other on the back, but I was a huge Billings fan last year and very excited to see him fall. I think we tend to have very similar draft perspectives. We were both big on Mixon when he fell, Billings when he fell.
Yeah, kind of seems that way.
So it's kind of like we're almost like the same persons. We're not like The View, where you have
No, we are not. No, we are not like The View. No.
But that being said, and it's hard to say because they rarely play rookies on defense. They generally play them a little more on offense. Burfict's kind of been the one exception over the last 6-7 years that got a lot of playing time his first year. So I don't know how much he would have gotten in. All the talk out of camp was really high, and it kind of made you wonder, well, is this a guy that actually would have played more? And I don't know if they would have, but even if they wouldn't have, I'm sure he would have gotten in some. And so I think this year, especially with Pecco gone, they have some other quality guys there. You have Brandon Thompson, Deshaun Williams, who is another guy who seems to just be on the cusp of getting that chance. But all that being said, I think this is really Billings' chance to break out and be, the guy's going to play on first down, second down, probably some on third down. He very well could be the guy. He looked great in all the film I think everyone's seen of him coming out of Baylor. So, until he proves us otherwise, I think there's a lot of reason to have the needle high on him.
Okay, so sounds like you're in agreement there with me, at least as the potential is huge, obviously, and we kind of say that tongue in cheek because he's a massive human being himself. But the potential there is huge, and obviously, if you have a chance, not to self-promote, but go read the post I put up on Andrew Billings, kind of talking about this, and not because of it's my post or anything, but you might be shocked at some of the stats that the defense let up at the beginning of the year. I think in the first 10 games they let up 7 100-yard rushing performances and were 2-4-1 in those performances. So a guy like Billings should help that, especially early on. Now, moving on from Billings, that was kind of last week's story. Who's a potential breakout player for you, Scott?
Well, the first one that I wanted to say, and I kind of alluded this a little bit in the Billings question, is a guy who I'm not going to say, but I really want to say Carl Lawson, because everything he's done in the rookie mini camps, all the offseason stuff, that he just looks like this insane pass rushing freak who is going to go in on the right side, replace someone like Michael Johnson on third down and just, be unstoppable. That being said, Vontaze Burfict's pretty much the only guy they've played on the defensive side of the ball as a rookie who they gave any meaningful snaps to. Even guys like Geno Atkins played little his first year. Carlos Dunlap played little. Darqueze Dennard really hasn't played at all. William Jackson, he was hurt, but when he got healthy, they chose to sit him over Cedric Pierman. Drake Kirkpatrick sat forever. So I don't think Lawson's really going to get the chance. So that being said, the guy who I'm thinking of, and talking about guys being on the same wavelength, one of the guys in our YouTube chat actually posted the guy I was about to mention. If I can find it up here, Royal Flush 513 mentioned, and my guy is CJ Uzomah. And basically twofold. One, because I think Eifert's going to get hurt again, I don't think it's a matter if, I think it's when. He has shown he's very and it's not like one injury, it's just a litany of things. He gets this thing broken, then okay, that's okay, now another thing breaks, and another thing. It's just, when you start to fall apart, you start to fall apart. And you see it people get older. Once you start getting injuries, you get more and more. And I know he's not that old, but he just seems to be someone who's constantly in the shop, constantly having one thing or another, which kind of sucks. He's a great player when he's on the field, and we'd obviously love to see him on the field, but he just can't stay on the field. And so that being said, who's the guy that's going to step in? And they didn't draft anyone this year. They didn't really bring anyone, and so it's going to be Croft and Uzama. And even though Croft was drafted much higher, last year the team definitely showed that Uzama seemed to be the one they favored. He was the one that got the snaps when Eifert was out. He's the one that seems to be the number 2. Now, granted, when Eifert came in, Uzama basically disappeared, but that's because they had Eifert and weren't running a lot of 2 tight end sets except for Jake Fisher and the jumbo package. But other than that, so I think that Eifert is going to get hurt, and when he's hurt, I think Uzama is going to be the guy. And I think this offense is one that is going to use the tight end. I mean, they threw to him a decent amount in essentially his first year playing. Now that he has more experience, he has that year, on the field. I think he's a guy that could surprise a lot of people because he's probably going to be out there, especially if Eifert's hurt, almost every play because they don't do a lot of no tight end sets. Just because they need the extra blocking, and I think the way the offensive line is probably going to be this year, they're probably going to need the extra blocking. So I really can't imagine them, doing a shotgun 5 linemen and just spreading everyone out. And they might. I just don't think Zampese is going to do that. So he's going to be probably going to be on the field almost every snap when Eifert's out. And so I think he's going to have the opportunities, and I think he's good enough. He showed last year he can catch the ball. He's pretty athletic. Guy that kind of flew under the radars that didn't get drafted very high because he just didn't have any catches. He had very little playing time when he was at Auburn. So he's someone who, if I was to pick a breakout guy, I would go with C.J. Uzama, and that's kind of the reason why I would go with him.
I love that pick, and that was one I was kind of rattling around in my brain. Last week we talked – excuse me – we talked about the tight end position and some concerns there, whether it's Eifert's injury, whether it's, ineffectiveness of Croft. I also mentioned that the thing that kind of made me not go with Uzoma is he missed 6 games himself last year with injury, and that's concerning a bit. But I did see some nice growth. I did see a lot of, I don't want to say the same traits as Tyler Eifert because he just doesn't have that game-breaking skill set that Eifert does. But I do see a lot of nice traits. I think it was the Jets game to kick off the season. He had a huge catch that almost led to almost was a touchdown catch. I think it was like a 60-yard play or something. Other plays, he kind of had a touchdown late in the season. So there's a lot to like there, and I do like that pick. Now we're teetering on bold predictions. Our next segment, teaser alert. This might mine in terms of a breakout player might constitute both. I'm going to go with Jake Fisher at right tackle. I think in terms of what I've seen between Cedric Ogbuehi and him, now it hasn't been great with either of them, but I think there's going to be a little less pressure on the right tackle side than there is on the left tackle side. There's still going to be immense pressure on both of those young guys. I think Fisher is a pretty athletic guy. I don't want to say that his ceiling is bigger than Ogbuehi, but I think his floor is a lot higher. Like I think he could be a average to above average tackle, especially once he gets a little more time. He still didn't look very good last year when they kind of kicked him in at both spots, but I still feel that he still has shown a little bit more in terms of the positive aspects than Ogbuehi has, unfortunately. So I'm going to say Jake Fisher on the right-hand side, and I think maybe Andre Smith, the veteran, can help him out a bit. I do think this selection of mine, this breakout players selection of mine, is a bit boom or bust. Fisher and Ogbuehi could be guys that just end up not being NFL caliber tackles, and that would really derail this team, especially in a year where they lost Andrew Whitworth, they lost Kevin Zeitler. They've got some, Andre Smith is now, as I mentioned, taking over what seems to be at right guard. So I think Fisher can come in and be a pretty decent tackle. I know it's a risky proposition saying that based on what we've seen from him so far in his career, both injury-wise and ineffectiveness and kind of being in and out of the lineup. But year 3, which is what the Oboihi and Fisher are in right now, seem to be kind of those big years, especially for offensive lineman development. I kind of see Fisher maybe getting in there and playing some effective football. Not so much maybe at the beginning of this year, but maybe as the year wears on, maybe as the offensive unit with a lot of new faces on there begins to gel a bit more. I think maybe we'll see some better things from Fisher, and I think everybody would be ecstatic with that, because obviously he and Oboihi are the two biggest question marks on this team right now as we sit and almost come into training camp. What are your breakout players? We'd love to hear from you. We're scouring the YouTube chat. We're scouring Twitter and looking at all of the feedback we're getting. We also asked you a question of the show, which is kind of a dessert / Dairy Queen question. And Scott, we actually did get quite a bit of feedback so far, and we've got someone, Royal Flush 513. I've actually become fond of mint chocolate chip lately. JJ Tabor, the thing with chocolate chip cookie with vanilla ice cream and chocolate topping is best. There's been a little talk of Oreo in the chat room as well. So that I don't know if you got any feedback on that stuff. Are you an Oreo guy, Scott? Are you there, Scott? I can't seem to hear you. But anyway, you'd be happy to know that there are some people who are big dessert guys like yourself. So you can enjoy that with your DQ stuff. At any rate, this is why we edit, folks. This is why we record live, so we can edit later. But for those of you who get to watch us live, you get to see some of the stuff behind the scenes. Are you back, Scott? I think we got you.
I think. Can you hear me?
I got you now. Yeah. Okay. So we were saying the Oreos. There's a little bit. No, you're good. There's a little bit of chat about the Oreos mint chocolate chip. I don't know if you've. This is your question, buddy. So I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that, but.
Yeah, I'm a huge Oreo fan. I do like the mint Oreo Blizzard there. If I have had too many of the chocolate, that's kind of the one I will go to. So, yeah, definitely an Oreo guy. I'm also cool with things like Hydrox, like the knockoff.
Oh, man. Well, you've got Sam Turner in the YouTube chat wondering if you don't like Oreos because you bailed out right when we started talking to Oreos.
Yeah, that was actually, I think it was a Dairy Queen competitor had hacked our site.
Yeah. Well, keep giving us those answers. Keep giving us your breakout players for the Bengals as we get close to training camp. You can find the show on iTunes. The show is on SoundCloud, YouTube. We post all of the material on Cincy Jungle as well. You can get in touch with the show on Twitter at BengalsOBI, as well as via email, theobinsider@gmail.com. Scott, you've kind of come up with this one, but last week I made I guess a bold prediction saying that Darqueze Dennard was going to lead the Bengals in interceptions, and I don't know if you agree with that or not, but you've come up with quite a few bold predictions, one of which was on Cincy Jungle already this week. I don't know if you want to talk about that one as well as maybe another you have, since we missed you last week.
Yeah, there's this kind of started the bold predictions going back maybe 2 years ago. And this was actually, interestingly, one of the first posts I ever wrote for Cincy Jungle was bold predictions. And there was this absurd one I wrote about Andy Dalton being named the NFL MVP, which apparently was so absurd that the NFL Network decided to carry it and run with it on their TV channel. Because apparently this blog out there was posting crazy things. Turned out that was the year Andy Dalton was actually an MVP consideration until he got hurt at the end of the year. So we'll see if any of these end up living to that hype or come close to that. Yeah, and there were a couple that have been published this year so far. The first one was, and I'll just mention this one very briefly, because this was posted maybe a week or so ago, was A.J. Green finally making the Pro Bowl or All-Pro, being named first-team All-Pro. For as great as A.J. Green has been, and any Bengals fan who's seen the Bengals play, no, he is phenomenal. The way he adjusts in air, the way he gets open, the way he makes people miss when he's, juking people and running these routes, and, the way his concentration, he catches his double team, triple team, the ball's bouncing he is a phenomenal receiver, puts up great numbers. That being said, to get named first-team All-Pro, you have to have just absurd numbers. You have to be in a high-flying offense where you are the focal point. And with Dalton, with the offense, they just haven't done that. They've gotten good numbers, very good numbers, but not these absurd video game numbers that you kind of need. So he's never, for as good as he's never been first-team All-Pro. So the one bold prediction I had was this year he's finally going to get it. And one of the reasons it's kind of bold is because their offense was pretty abysmal last year. But even though it was abysmal, until Green got hurt, he was leading the NFL in receptions, yards, and if you projected his numbers out, he would have led the NFL in receptions and in yardage and would have got his first-team All-Pro selection. This year, I think it's more the same. They have the same offensive coordinator. Assuming Green's healthy, he should have similar numbers. Granted, they have more people to throw the ball to, but that should help take away defenses as well as it would take away his numbers. So for me, I think he's there's no reason to expect that he couldn't do that. And the second one, I'll just jump on. I don't know if you need to comment on that before I go to the next one.
What was that on the next one?
I didn't know if you wanted to say anything about the A.J. Green one before I move on.
No, yeah. I hope so. In terms of A.J. Green getting an All-Pro nomination, I think it's well deserved. I think, unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, whether it's just the Bengals not getting far into the playoffs or him getting hurt. I think he would have had it last year if he didn't get hurt, and that's kind of saying a lot, and it isn't, because the team wasn't really winning regardless. But that definitely was not on A.J. Green. He was carrying that team and that offense for quite a bit. And you saw the effect once he and a multitude of others ended up being out there. But yeah, I think it's well deserved. I'd like to see him do it. I don't know if he'll still get the amount of looks, just because the Bengals added a couple new wide receivers. Now they have Tyler Boyd still. They're getting back Tyler Eifert. So his looks may drop as opposed to what they were in the beginning of last year, but still a guy that's an epitome of success and consistency, and one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver in the NFL in my eyes.
And the second bold prediction, this one I think just got published today on the Cincy Jungle site. So if you are a reader, haven't seen it, or have seen it, or not a reader, whatever, feel free to check it out. There's a poll, so you can tell us if you think this next prediction is – actually, all these have a poll, so you can let us know if you agree or not. But the next one is Carlos Dunlap finishing in the top 3 in the NFL in sacks. Something he's never done in his career. But if you look at his numbers, he's actually the top sack producer of anyone who was taken in the year he was drafted. And interesting side note, Geno Atkins, I think, is number 2 or 3 of that same draft class. So obviously a very productive class for the Bengals as far as pass rush. 2 years ago, he finished 4th. Last year, he finished like 22nd, and a couple years before that, finished like 26th. He's always kind of been in that 6 to 9 range. Been a decent, solid guy, but never someone who's put up those 15, 20 kind of sack numbers. And you look at last year. Okay, last year he only had 8. 20 guys finishing above him, so going to the top 3 is kind of absurd. No one's really talking nationally about him being a late pass rusher or being in the top 2 or 3. But I think it's very feasible because you look at 2 years ago when he finished 4th, just 1 sack away from number 3. The things that he had to have that helped them. One, our offense was great. 2 years ago, we were scoring tons of points. Nugent wasn't missing. Well, he was missing kicks, but we were still scoring a lot of points despite that. Walton was throwing a lot of touchdowns, few turnovers. Jeremy Hill was scoring a lot. The teams had to play catch up, and when they have to play catch up, they have to throw the ball a lot. That gives your defense a lot of times as they pin their ears back and go after the quarterback, and that leads to a lot of sacks and a lot of pressures. And that's what we were getting last year. The offense couldn't get out of their way. They were playing from behind, and the opponents didn't have to throw it crazy to catch up, so we just didn't have those opportunities. This year, in theory, the offense should be better. They're in their 2nd year in Zampese's offense. In year 2 with Gruden, in year 2 with Hugh Jackson, the Bengals offense has got much better. You can assume something probably similar this year. They improved the running game with Joe Mixon, who was arguably a top running back in this year's draft class, if not, the last 5 or 10 draft classes. They got a additional wide receiver and John Ross, who added speed, which is something they've kind of lacked for a while. And Green is someone who can stretch the defense. Green should be back hopefully for the whole year. Eifert possibly will play all year. So things are kind of looking up on the offensive side, which means more yardage, more points, which means the defenses may have to throw more. That puts Dunlap back in the situation he was in 2 years ago, where he has more of a chance to be a pure pass rusher and get those sacks, get those hurries, get those pressures. And then the other thing is the addition of guys we've mentioned on the podcast already today, guys like Carl Lawson, there's also Willis from Kansas State, Andrew Billings, guys who are better, who in theory should be better pass rushers than what we have. So you get these pass rushers on the offensive line. That means the quarterback is going to be under a lot more pressure. He's going to be forced into Dunlap more times. And obviously, it works both ways. Because Dunlap can put, but it gives him more one-on-one coverages, and so basically improving the pass rush all around. So all that being said, trying to make this as much as possible without trying to forget anything obvious, I think is another reason why this prediction isn't all that crazy. But I think it's something that is very feasible.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I went a little bit last week with my Denard prediction. Is there wasn't a Reggie Nelson on the team last year that grabs 7-8 interceptions. It was kind of spread around a bit. A lot of quarterbacks avoided throwing a lot of passes towards Adam Jones and Dre Kirkpatrick. And I think my reasoning, and it sounds kind of similar to what you're talking about in terms of other amassed talent, but my reasoning with Denard had to do with the fact that he'll probably be targeted a lot in the slot, and he might finally just kind of turn a corner and stay healthy and put some nice games together, and hopefully that is the case because that'll help the Bengals defense a lot. Good stuff from you, Scott. That post, as Scott mentioned, is available on CincyJungle.com. You can kind of check out a lot of the stats and everything. And Scott, I don't know if you saw, man, Carlos Dunlap did a little response on Twitter to the article, talking about how you kind of talked about some stats about how he's been the player with the most sacks since in that 2010 class. So he kind of responded to that. So check that out, my friend. He responded to Cincy Jungle as they shot out that tweet, and it's a good post there. What's that?
Wow, I'm someone have to dust off my Twitter account.
Yep. So you gotta check it out. And obviously, you mentioned that 2010 draft full of great players, full of other players that make you just, I want to tear your hair out. Jermaine Gresham was that first-round pick. Carlos Dunlap, that second-round pick. Obviously, you had Jordan Shipley, who had the ability to be an insane slot receiver. Unfortunately, a bad knee injury kind of derailed him. You have Brandon G., who never really materialized. And then you got guys, obviously, like Geno Atkins and whatnot in the fourth round. So some productive guys, some guys that were productive but also frustrating, and other guys that were kind of what ifs because of injuries and whatnot from that 2010 class. Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins obviously are the shining stars there. My bold prediction, and I won't take a lot of time on it, but since I'm going, for lack of better words, balls to the wall with the Jake Fisher breakout player thing, I'm going to say that Andre Smith plays at or near a Pro Bowl level at right guard. And I say this because, first of all, I mean, you look at that line, and yes, there's been struggles with Aboihi, Fisher. Bowling is probably currently the best player on that line. Russell Bodine has struggled. But you look at it this way, and I'm usually the cynic and the negative guy, so I'm going to spin this into a positive here. You've got 2 former first-round picks in Aboihi and Andre Smith on that line. You've got a second-round pick in Jake Fisher on that line. And you've got 2 fourth-round picks in Bowling and Bodine on that line. That's very heavy investments. And Scott, I think one of our first shows, you talked about the investments the Bengals have made, if I remember correctly, the high amount of investments in the draft the Bengals have made on the offensive line. Now, just because they made high picks doesn't mean all of those guys will pan out and play well, but you have to figure there's talent there if these are first-round picks, second-round picks. I mean, these are some high picks on that line. Andre Smith was a number 6 overall guy. Bodine, obviously not everybody's favorite player, but if you're a Pro Football Focus guy, Bodine has improved year to year and really improved in the run game, believe it or not, last year by their metrics. You've got Clint Bowling on the left, and now you've got a guy towards the end of his career, was an effective tackle for a good portion of his career when he wasn't hurt. You've got a guy now kicking inside, doing that thing that older tackles do to extend their career and potentially help out an offensive line even more. And truth be told, this might be a position that was better suited for Andre Smith from the get-go. He's a big mauler guy, a guy that can really do a lot of things in the run game, was a decent pass protector, but showed some limitations against those smaller, quicker guys. Now you kick him inside. You've got a more athletic Jake Fisher on the outside. He can kind of help Fisher on certain things, but he can also help out in the interior parts of the line. I don't know. Again, big boomer bust potential here. And who knows, if Fisher ends up not playing well at all, we might see Andre Smith back on the right tackle spot, relieving him. But for now, I think as an offensive guard, I think there is very, very high potential for Andre Smith to play at or near a Pro Bowl level. And that is my bold prediction for this week. Are we crazy? You guys let us know. You can also let us know some of your bold predictions. I saw an entertaining one, Scott, from Supa Soul in the YouTube chat saying bold preseason predictions. That's kind of a tongue twister. Bold preseason predictions, ? A.J. McCarron throws 13 touchdowns in the preseason. You can laugh at it, but who knows? I mean, if the Bengals are somehow showcasing him for some sort of trade or, dangling him out there even though they don't want to admit it, and you've got 4 games and probably aren't playing a lot of the starters because of that new 90-man rule that lasts throughout the preseason, that might not be Is it, Scott? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just I think one of these bold predictions is coming true in the podcast.
So maybe it is. You were in a trance. So maybe it was that crazy.
Well, one of the bold predictions, which came from Andrew and the Cat Fives, was that my internet connection was my breakout dark horse.
I saw that.
It's been working really well up until ever since we have upgraded. I put an extra gerbil in the little spinning wheel to get it cranking. I don't know. I thought for sure.
Man, that's funny. That's funny.
That dial-up modem, plugged into this thing. I thought for sure it'd be working right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the feedback, and thanks, Scott, for your bold predictions there. Again, Scott already has one of those bold predictions posts up on CincyJungle.com. Check it out. Speaking of CincyJungle.com, you can check out this podcast and a lot of different material we do with it on cincyjungle.com. We're on iTunes. We're on SoundCloud. We're on YouTube. So check us out there. We are looking to expand where our podcast is available. So we'll let you know as soon as that occurs. You can also get in touch with the show on Twitter at BengalsOBI and via email at theobinsider@gmail.com. It's time to close up, as we usually do, with some fan questions, Scott. And for the listener questions, we're still taking some. We've already got a couple queued up, I believe. But if you want to leave some in the YouTube chat, the Cincy Jungle chat, that sort of thing, do so, and we will try to get to those before we get out of here. Scott, we've got one we've talked about a little bit, kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit, but we've talked about how this show is international and what have you, and we've got some people from the UK listening to the show, which is awesome. I mean, I think that's so cool that people so far, I'm so humbled that people abroad want to listen to, and as well as within the U.S. as well. But we're humbled by all our listeners. But the fact that international folks listen to this show is awesome as well. And this email we got this week, Scott, came from Keith Evans, who lives in the Bahamas, which is really cool. And by the way, if you ever get a chance to go travel to the Bahamas and you haven't, go do it. It is so awesome down there. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty, and you can have a ton of fun. Anyway, my twin brother Keith and I are diehard Bengals fans. We live in the Bahamas. AJ Green, Andy Dalton, and Vontaze Burfict are well known in my country. I've been following the team since the John Kitna days. Hopefully the 2003 John Kitna days and not before that, because that probably wouldn't be too fun. But looking forward to the upcoming season as well as your weekly podcast during the season. Thank you. Very nice. I always enjoy listening to your predictions and in-depth analyses on the previous games. 2 questions. Let's start with one. The first one. Do you think, and this we can kind of just be quick with this, Scott, do you think the Bengals, as we sit here today, a week and a half away from training camp, do you think the Bengals return to the playoffs this year?
I'm going to say yes, just because other than Steelers, the division isn't very strong. So, I think the Browns are going to be better than a 1-15 team, but I think it's a winnable division. And I think, too, they pretty much have everything they had 2 years ago when they were 12-4. I mean, they were, 10-2 when Dalton went out? Other than losing Zeitler, but granted, the offensive line is an important piece, so I'm not trying to dismiss that. But pretty much outside of the offensive line, you can argue they're pretty much equal or better than the team that was 12-2 in 2015 when Dalton went out. Now, do I think they'll go 10-2? I don't know, but that was a very good team, and I think this team should be comparable. So, yes, I'm going to say yes to the playoff team.
Okay. And unfortunately, we missed you that night. Rebecca Toback from CincyJungle.com filled in very nicely, and we talked about a schedule prediction. We went through game by game. I believe she had about 11 wins for the Bengals. I think I had 10. I still see them in that 9-10 win range, maybe squeaking in. I don't know if that means division title, maybe squeaking in with one of those wild card spots. It kind of depends on some of those other teams that showed some good growth last year. The Titans, who the Bengals play, teams like that, if they can kind of sustain that, the Raiders, or if they end up kind of taking a little bit of a backslide, we'll see. What I do think is I think we might see, unfortunately, maybe a little bit of a slow start from the Bengals, followed by a pretty strong middle and end, just because this team has so much turnover and there's a lot of new parts to it. I want to say yes. I'm not completely sure, but I will say they're probably in that 9-10 win range. I've been kind of saying that both before and after the draft. I kind of see them right in there, but I don't know if we're looking – I don't know if I fully agree with you, Scott, if we're looking at a 12-13 win team this year. I think the potential is most definitely there. There's just kind of a lot of question marks, and a lot of things have to go right for it to break that way. Doesn't mean it can't. We'll see. His second question, Scott, and This is kind of an interesting one. How do you feel the Bengals will fare against the AFC South and the NFC North opponents this year? So essentially, some of the unfamiliar teams that do boast some very good teams that the Bengals will see this year. You know, pretty strong Vikings team, a strong Packers team, a Lions team that you don't know what you're getting from year to year. In that NFC North, I think the Bears will probably not be very good. Then you look at the AFC South. You've got the Texans, who the Bengals I think are 1-6 against in the Andy Dalton era. Then you have obviously the Colts, who are getting Andrew Luck back. So I won't talk too much about it, just because I want to urge the listeners to go back and listen to our schedule prediction episode if they haven't already. But I do want to hear your thoughts on that, Scott, since we didn't have you on that episode.
And just giving a very quick, I'm going to say, looking at the teams that are in the NFC North and AFC South, I think that's 5-3, 6-2, somewhere in that range, because you have Chicago, who is a bad team, getting one. Minnesota, they have some. They're a decent team, but it's a very winnable game. Detroit came out of nowhere last year as a playoff team. I'm not sure if that was real or mirage. Green Bay is basically Aaron Rodgers and kind of mediocre outside. I mean, obviously, the rest of his team isn't nearly as good as he kind of carries that team. Last time we played them, we beat them a bunch of times and won that game, and then it's 2 times ago. And then last time was the one that had that wonderful fumble. So I think for last time we played Green Bay. So those are pretty much all winnable. South Jacksonville is absolutely horrible. The Colts are Andrew Luck and a bunch of nothing. I know we always struggle when Manning was there, hoping against Luck. Tennessee, I think, is a very, very good running team. And now with Corey Davis, they might be a little better in the receiving game. They have Delanie Walker. I think he's still there. And I know last year we kind of struggled letting tight ends score touchdowns. That one could probably be a challenge. Houston, as you mentioned, we, for whatever reason, just can never seem to beat Houston, which is kind of ridiculous. But that being said, I see 5 or 6 wins. I might be crazy. I don't see any less than 4. So I'd say 4-6. And no reason not to be optimistic, because right now we're in 6 wins.
4-6 wins. Well, I mean, they'll probably need that. They'll probably need at least the lower portion of that, because they'll probably need another 4 in their own. I mean, they might need all of those that you mentioned, because they'll probably need another 4 at least in their own division. The Titans game really, again, I don't want to harp too long on the schedule, just because we've talked about it a lot. But there is a really tough stretch of games from week 7 to week 11, and it's week 6 is the bye, and you go week 7, they're at Pittsburgh. Week 8, they host the Colts, which won't be easy. Then they go to Jacksonville. Well, Jacksonville, they weren't very good last year. They might be a little better this year. Who knows? They could be a lot better. I don't know. Probably still a 6-win team. So that should be what you think is a win. But the problem is the next 2 weeks, you go to Tennessee for that tough game, that tough team you just mentioned, Scott. And then you follow it up again with the 3rd straight road trip to Denver. So in 6 games, you've got – I'm sorry, excuse me. In 5 games, you've got 4 away games against the Steelers, the Jaguars, the Titans, and the Broncos. And then the only home game you have is against the Colts. So that's a tough stretch of games right there. And the Bengals at that point, if what I said was coming to fruition, if they kind of continue to gel and maybe that's when they start playing a little bit better football, that's really going to need to be the spot that they start doing that. If those teams are, if that appears as treacherous as it does on paper. I will say I think there was something on Twitter noting that the Bengals have the second easiest or the easiest schedule in terms of this year. We'll see. again, that stuff you can be optimistic about it, but obviously that changes from year to year, and you never know exactly what teams are going to look like every year. But we still are remaining a little bit of optimistic. We still have a little bit of optimism here. There was Mr. Sinister in the YouTube chat, and Sinister with a C. Question: my friends and I often debate on if Dalton has the arm to succeed in the deep ball offense, forming with Ross, Green, Malone, etc. What are your thoughts on this? Well, first of all, Mr. Sinister, I'd like to hear what side of the fence you're on. You said you and your friends debate it. I'd like to hear what side of the fence you're on. But Scott, any I've seen some improvement from Dalton in terms of the deep ball. There's still some throws where I go, oh gosh, AJ Green's got to bail him out on that one. But I've got some thoughts, but I want to hear yours on this, because a lot of people vary on Andy Dalton's arm strength. Maybe it is an arm strength issue. Maybe it's a footwork issue. Maybe it's a timing issue. All of the above. I haven't talked to you about this one, so I'd like to hear from you on it.
Yeah, just to give a quick answer, I'm going to say absolutely yes, Dalton can do it. Now, if you would have asked me in 2011, 2012, 2013, play after play where AJ Green would burn receivers and Dalton would underthrow him and he'd do stuff, these amazing acrobatic catches. And they were acrobatic because and then it gave the defenders time to catch up to him. And so he had to make these insane catches to get the ball that he should have gotten the touchdown. That being said, the last couple of years, the accuracy is a lot of the metrics support that. So this thought of Dalton not being a great or an accurate deep ball thrower seem to match more. It's perception we have from years and something matches what he's done lately. So I think as it goes, this seems to support it. I think we've seen it. I think it's related to Tom House, but it seems to be going to Tom House for whatever reason. Going forward, you see a difference in his deep ball accuracy. It's not that he didn't have, he didn't seem to have the enough. He's not, the also, well, that's not so. But anyway, he was he could never bring them deep balls last year. It seems to have been fixed. So I'm going to take Tom House if he didn't with it. If not, then I'm going to take him for the coincidence, because I think I'm going to say on the yes for that one.
I think he has a strong enough arm, and I don't always. I think I'm in agreement with largely what you said. I think he's got a strong enough arm to always do it, and we've seen him throw a lot of big bombs to AJ Green. We've seen AJ Green bail him out of some poor throws. I still think there are throws in that intermediate range where Andy is obviously short and intermediate range, but there are some intermediate throws I've seen Andy Dalton make that are wow throws. And I think back to specifically, if you think to week 3 of 2015, that dart he threw against the Ravens to AJ Green, and AJ Green did a ton of stuff after, obviously, where he kind of pirouetted out of tackles and all kinds of stuff, and it was in a gigantic play right after. I think it was a fumble return for a touchdown, something like that. Bengals responded right back. There are throws I've seen Andy Dalton make, 20, 25, 30 yards down the field. Another one that comes to mind, if you remember that Seattle Seahawks game in 2015, the one to Eifert. Eifert made a ridiculous catch, but it was the only spot that Andy Dalton could have thrown it, and it was I think it was in overtime, or when they were driving to kick that tying field goal. There are a lot of throws I've seen him make that are wow throws. There are some other throws where he either forces it or underthrows it, doesn't get enough on it. I think he's got a strong enough arm. I think he can throw the deep ball. I think he's gotten better with it. I still don't think he's absolutely outstanding at it. One thing I'll say, Mr. Sinister in the YouTube chat mentioned Ross and Malone. I do think, especially as some of those new guys get acclimated to the NFL, and especially if you look at Ross's skill set, Malone is a little bit more of a, go route, maybe a deep post, a corner, still needs some development. If you look at Ross, though, Ross is a guy that you can do a bubble screen and he just let him do the work and he can take it 60 yards. He can do the same on a slant. He can do the same on an intermediate route. He's not just a guy that can fly down the sideline and beat a corner. He can do a lot of different things in space. And I think the Bengals, especially early on with Ross, maybe as they look to get him on the field and develop a role for him, that is something that you might want to look for, even though it's not a deep ball. It might result in a long touchdown because a guy like Ross can dance around tackles, outrun guys, and do some things in space. But overall, I think Andy Dalton's gotten better with the deep ball. I think Scott and I agree with that. Probably not the best in the league, but gotten better with it. And he's really improved on his accuracy, especially if you look at the turnovers the last 2 seasons. And that's something that bodes well for the team as it goes forward, especially with all these new pieces. Our thanks to the listeners. Our thanks to Keith Evans, who sent us a really cool email from the Bahamas. Our thanks to everybody who tuned in live. This is the Orange and Black Insider. This is your podcast. This is the podcast for Bengals fans, and we want you to know that. And my thanks to my co-host, Scott. Scott, you've got a lot of variations on your dessert choices, my friend. You've got a lot of people chiming in on that. So good choice on your question.
Well, I suppose that's why they have many flavors. Even though maybe the flavors of my clearly someone is, and those people, who the hell's ever going to order the stuff that I'm grabbing?
This is by the way, Scott and I discussed throughout the week. Scott and I discussed topics and segments and stuff. And this DQ thing, my friend, you've had DQ teed up as a segment for a while, and I God love you for it.
Well, I think next week we'll have to broaden maybe do flavors, concrete mixers, and maybe the following week. Just show that we're a very cultured podcast that can do a variety of creative things, not just.
Yeah, what's the perfect temperature to cook red meat at, right? Something ridiculous, yeah. But no, good stuff, and great to have you back again this week. And dude, next week we're going to be talking. We're right there with training camp. I think by the time we record next week, we're just a couple of days away from when the Bengals kick off camp. So I'm pretty excited. I hope you are too.
Yeah, as long as we aren't discussing injuries.
Exactly. Oh, goodness, I know. Oh gosh, let's hope that's not the case. But thanks everyone for tuning in. Again, grab the show on iTunes, grab the snippets on iTunes. You can grab stuff on SoundCloud. You can grab it on YouTube. Grab it on cincyjungle.com and check out all the different stuff that myself, Scott Schulze, and all of the great contributors there put up. And if you have not checked out cincyjungle.com, I believe we are going to be having some contributors going live and covering some stuff at training camp. So check that out. We usually have 1 or 2 people covering stuff at training camp, and we might have some of those folks on our show to kind of tell us some firsthand information as well. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all of your support. Thanks for downloading the show. This has been the Orange and Black Insider. For Scott Schulze, I'm Anthony Cosenza. We'll see you next time.